Alright guys, here we are back for part 2 of the engine removal and disassembly from the 1998 Honda Civic EX with the D16Y8. Welcome back. So I've got the motor up and out, and we are going to start disassembling the different components off of it. Namely, we're going to separate the tranny, and so I'll let you watch that as we continue through that. Alright, transmission's off. Just taking a quick look at the throwout bearing there. Get that off. I'm going to find a bolt that I can use to support this, raise it up, pull the clutch off. Alright, now we get a really good look at this rear main seal. I'm taking a quick look at this, and you can see how clean it is right in the center below on the oil pan and dirty off to the sides. Pretty good indicator of what's going on there. Alright, we got her on the stand now, so we're going to start our disassembly. This is that bracket where the wire harness comes up and under the intake manifold I was talking about earlier in the part 1, where I didn't want to have to try and take this all apart. It's real bare to get to this from underneath the car, so it was much easier once it's on the stand to rotate it sideways and pull that apart. As you can see, I was working on that alternator there. That bracket for that lower swing side was just really frozen on there pretty good. So I'm starting to work back on the harness, get this harness up and out of the way, and continue through that, and then I'll come back to the alternator. This is another pretty typical thing. I went to pull the plug out of the knock sensor, and of course half the knock sensor came with it, so I knew I was going to need to replace that. That's fine. We'll get a new one of those that are ordered up. Alternator is just a bear. On the back of that bracket, there's a slip sleeve that when you tighten up the bolt, it crunches up against the alternator pretty tight. And that bad boy just did not want to move, so I was finally able to get it loose. And now we're going to start some more disassembly. Got this table here, and you're going to see me a little bit. I'm going to start laying out engine components on this after I pull all the main exterior components off of the engine, like the intake manifold, etc. Alright, intake manifold's off. You see I left the injectors and everything on it. No need to take them off. So now I'm working on the Vtec Solenoid there. That'll come off. On that gasket, there's a screen. So if you have one of these engines, you should check that periodically. Probably every 30-40,000 miles to see if that screen's plugging up. It'll prevent your Vtec from engaging properly. And then I'm working on this crossover tube for the thermostat housing. And these are pretty much notorious for having issues coming off. So I think one of the bolts I broke the head off, and I was able to get the other one out. This is where pre-spraying all this hardware before I took the engine out really helped. Those usually the heat shield bolts don't want to come out, and that helped a lot. So continue to spray. Use a little PV blaster there. Taking that's the power steering main bracket off, and I'll start working on the exhaust manifold. Now, harmonic bouncer bolt on Hondas is notoriously hard to get out. They even make a special tool to hold that. I end up snapping off my reducer here. You're going to see in a minute from this. That's a snap-on breaker bar, snap-on reducer, and I end up snapping that reducer, which I finally got replaced recently, trying to get this thing off. And there she goes. You know, this was really my fault. I should have not used a reducer. Alright, I missed a little clip there. Don't know what happened to that one. But I've got the harmonic bouncer off now. I've got the top cover off of the timing belt, and I pulled the valve cover off, so we're going to start disassembly of the top end. Alright, that's our timing belt tensioner I just took out, and then slipped the belt off and took the pulley off of the crankshaft. Alright, taking off the camshaft from the top. That is, all the retainers are out, starting from the outside, working my way in. I got those off, and I'm going to pull the camshaft. That's out now. I really like to use my jack handle as a cheater bar sometimes and get things done, and it works pretty good. So. The cylinder head is off, so I'm going to put that on the table. I'm going to take a look at the top of the pistons and continue on. Alright, turned her around, flipped her upside down. We're going to start working on taking that oil pan off. So I'm taking the two brackets off that support the transmission there, and then we'll start working on this oil pan. You see there I'm spreading kitty litter on the floor to try and somewhat manage the mess as this stuff starts to leak down. But you know, you're always going to have drip engine. I don't have a drip pan. You can get the drip trays for your engine stands. I don't have one, so just managing the mess at that point. It's pretty easy to tell by how dark all the metal is stained that previous owners didn't do a great job of changing the oil or used subpar oil in this engine. So it's something I'll have to deal with and clean as I get ready for reassembly. Alright, girdle's off. The girdle is what retains all the main caps on the D16Y8. So the girdle is now off. I'm rotating and inspecting the crank. And I'll start pull the oil filter off there, and then I'll start working on the rod bearings. Alright, I'm going to take it back to normal speed here a second. I'm going to take the camera and I'm going to kind of show you guys all the main bearings as we roll side to side here. To kind of see the condition of the crank. It's in a pretty good spot. You get some oil staining, which is pretty typical. So it looks pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that, and we're going to continue down our process here. Alright, I'm working on the oil pump there. Pull the oil pump off. I've got a new one in my kit, so set off to the side. There's a keyway there. We get that keyway off the crank as well. That's set off to the side. And let's see, we're working on the rear cover for the rear main seal. And we'll get that pulled off. I've got enough clearance on the engine stand that I can pull that, which is a good thing. Makes it a lot easier. And we'll get that disassembled. Alright, I'm taking a look at that rear seal, and you can see, when I'm looking at it, I see some cracks in the face of that seal, where it's just gotten dry and brittle over the years. I mean, 200,000+ miles, I'm not surprised at all. Alright, so I pulled the rod cap off there, and then I pushing the piston out through the top of the engine, and I'm keeping the rod caps directionally correct, and I'm putting them in the right positioning on my table. So you want the rods and the rod caps meet, they always match. You want to keep those together, and then just for myself, I'm keeping them in the right positions. I want to put them on the right journals on the crank. I want to keep everything the way it was. Alright, so I'm using a rubber mallet to tap the studs on the rod, and you see what I did there is I used my extension. I actually put the nut back on a couple threads, and I used my extension and the socket for that nut to tap that, to drop that rod down just enough to get it to move. Alright, crankshaft's out. I just pulled the thrush washers out to keep the crank from moving front to back too much, and I'm pulling the main bearings out, inspecting those and making sure that the journals all look good, and rotate around, pour the rest of that engine oil out, and move on. Alright, we're going to get this water pump pulled off of here and continue down the process. Alright, back to normal speed on the video here. Pick the camera up. I'm going to show you guys the block now that the head's off, pistons are out. You can kind of see down the cylinder bores. You know, they're nice and shiny, look pretty good. I mean, they're worn is what we expect with a couple 100,000 miles, but nothing damaging, nothing too crazy, looks pretty good. And that's it, guys. Engine's all disassembled completely. Here's it all laid out on the table. Looks pretty good, and stay tuned for part 3. Look forward to seeing you.
I hope you enjoyed the video. Please subscribe and like the video down here. And to watch another video, click over here. Thank you, and bye.